Hi, this is Kimberly. This is a synopsis and a critique of My Daddy is a Hero, How Chris Watts Went from Family Man to Family Killer by Lena Derhally. Before we get started, I wanted to say thank you to everyone for your kind and encouraging comments concerning the Cadle clusterfuck. I kind of have bad anxiety. Well, not kind of, I do. And my first reaction to something unfortunate or adverse happening always is to panic. Just ask my family. I don't do drama. This just landed in my lap and I could not pretend that I didn't see it. I was researching moral responsibilities, for crying out loud. And I have no freaking agenda or any damn thing like that. There's nothing sinister, and there's definitely no damn conspiracy. I really just want to forget the shit ever happened. I saw plagiarism. I just cannot look the other way. That's it. So, somebody said, quote, I was going to listen to your video, but I couldn't. Your mouth is just too filthy, end quote. Okay, well, I'm sorry you're such a bitch-ass moralist prude. And for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about with the Cadle clusterfuck, just go back and look at the video before this one, dated December 11th. You'll understand if you watch that. So let's get started on the new book, shall we? Called My Daddy is a Hero. I'm sure that's said sarcastically or something like that, but I just hope y'all don't get bored with this book series because I don't see myself going off on this new author. She's obviously very educated, intelligent, and has common sense. I'm confident she knows the rules of not only the English language, but all about plagiarism stuff too. So I can still raise hell about Chris and shit to keep things all lively and high-spirited. First of all, I want to say I appreciate this author being so modern and having a Kindle version. And my book was promptly delivered to my Kindle on the 9th as promised. I did pre-order. And the first thing she does in the book is a disclaimer, citing where she got most of her information for the book. How about that? I also like that with a Kindle, I can make notes in the margin as I go, as I'm reading along. And with the very first sentence, I'm just all merry and joyful. A nice feeling after being so scarred from Crucible. For those of you unfamiliar with Crucible, it's a long, boring story. But it's Chris and Scribble put together. And Scribble came from Scribe and Cadle combined. A scribe, of course, back in the day, copied documents before printing was invented. I kept coming up with the nicknames on my last book review. I probably will on this one too. It just happens. Her book starts off with a disclaimer, and I want it to feel important, so I'm going to start using disclaimers too here and there. Like when I want to deny responsibility for stuff, like I did in the last video. That shit was for entertainment purposes only. So nobody come after me. I have crippling anxiety, for fuck's sake. And I did not do anything wrong. I found a wrong and I reported it. Nothing wrong in that. We should all try to be moral. Look out for each other. If we're all a bunch of liar pants, no one's going to be happy. No one's going to be able to trust anybody. We'll all be all paranoid and shit. So anyway, let's get on with this book. The disclaimer says in part, to any scribes listening, please take note. But the disclaimer says in part, quote, the information in this book has mostly been taken from the Frederick, Colorado Police Department and the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, CBI discovery documents from the investigation of the disappearance of Shanann Watts and her daughters, end quote. And it's beyond me why some people would not admit that they did that for their book. What a smart woman we have in our midst that wrote this book, and honest too. I appreciate that. One will naturally refer to the discovery when writing true crime. She even has fancy footnotes and a bibliography. God, nightmares from old lady Hansard's class in 11th grade English are like flashing in my mind, resurfacing. But For those of us that have forgotten, a bibliography is a list of references or books that have been referred to during the writing of a book. And she says, quote, "The thoughts, views, and opinions are solely the author's. The psychoanalysis in this book is not intended as definitive truth, as it is speculation and opinion based on the author's professional opinion and expertise. The author wrote this book with the objective of understanding tragedies like this one in hopes of preventing them in the future." End quote. I like that she states her reason for writing the book, but one always assumes they also do it for money, and that's okay. One has to pay the bills and buy groceries and wine and stuff. This is her bio on Amazon. Lena Derhally is a licensed psychotherapist certified in Amigo relationship therapy. She specializes in relationships and sees individuals and couples with a variety of issues. She has published numerous articles in the Washington Post and Huffington Post. She has also been interviewed for a variety of publications as an expert, including Self Magazine and Glamour Magazine. She is the co-host of a psychology podcast, Sessions with Bob and Lena, and is a public speaker. In her spare time, when she's not spending time with her family and friends, she enjoys being a clinical instructor in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at the George Washington School of Medicine, where she mentors medical students. She is also very passionate about raising money and awareness for children with trauma who have been afflicted by war. This lady's the real deal. Okay, so now we're going to go on to her introduction. She was immediately drawn into the case and followed it, as she said, obsessively. I like her. She's followed it obsessively, just like me and a lot of us. She actually has been following the case. I have a good feeling about this book. Even though she doesn't have new juicy bits and bobs about the case, at least she will, it seems, give us some insight into that bird brain peanut head. So yeah, she does have some new juicy bits and bobs, doesn't she? Even though she's not talked to him, there are hours of video where she's been able to observe him. But one of the things that most excites me is from this Amazon summary of the book. Quote, "She explores the childhoods, families of origin, meeting, and early relationship of Shanann and Chris Watts." End quote. This is going to be good, guys. I feel it. So yeah, she does have new and shiny shit for us to look at. I have been hoping that someone would do their childhood, so this is perfect. I'm very excited. Lena said, quote, "I couldn't quite wrap my head around how someone so seemingly normal his entire life with no warning signs or red flags could do something so heinous and evil." Me either, Lena. It's scary as hell. The no warning part. Everyone said he did not set off any alarm bells. But were there some subtle warning signs that were overlooked? She says there was no way Shanann would have been able to tell that Chris Watts was capable of doing this. That actually brings me comfort. The reason it does is, I guess it's because there was not a red flag that she missed. She was just so completely in love with that insane dipshit that that's all she could see was her love, and she was baffled, I know, the last several weeks. But wait, I shouldn't be calling him names regarding his mental status. We have a professional in the house, so I should not be attempting to diagnose him. But still, he is a dipshit. I think that's been proven as fact. But the author says Shanann felt safe with him and trusted him, and I believe she did. She recognizes that we all have several questions about him, about his mental state and why it was hidden, and was he born like this, what were the warning signs, etc. I'm so excited to have a well-trained, real-world psychotherapist to answer these questions. Quote, "Was Chris a nice guy who had a break from reality? Was he an evil psychopath, a narcissist, something else? If he's a psychopath, how did he hide it for so long? How did Chris become like this? Was he born like this, or did he become this way over time? Were there any warning signs? Are there warning signs that I can look out for so this doesn't happen to me?" End quote. Oh, I have questions. Was Chris and shit born a dumbass and a wuss? And did Shanann know he was a pain in the ass as he was before they got married? Could Shanann have saved him from being a pinhead, numbskull doofus, candy-ass Nimrod, mega-bitch coward, shit-for-brain snowflake, piss-face, nincompoop, wolf in sheep's clothing pile of chicken shit? And Lena has people. This is how you do it, guys. I love professionals. Well, sometimes. I also like to be all casual and shit. In fact, I like that even more, so don't expect me to start dressing up and shit. I prefer pajamas and no shoes. But back to her having people. She has consulted with a criminal psychologist, a neuroscientist, and a journalist. How exciting is that? I'm impressed and a little bit intimidated. Quote, I share my opinions in this book, not because I believe it is the gospel, but because I want to contribute something meaningful and substantive to the discussion and hopefully help bring some knowledge or closure to those who still struggle to move on. End quote. There she goes, being all smart and stuff again. I am in complete awe. She said that it is impossible to report the full truth. Exactly. We don't know the full truth. Chris Watts has confessed many times. It gets more dramatic each time. That asshole shitface gets on my last nerve. But the author said that she has to use Chris Asshat Watts' latest version because that is the only account she has. We probably never will know the full truth, but I will never stop hoping for it. I hope it dawns on him one day that what he had with his family was very special. It obviously was. Otherwise, why would we all become so engrossed in it, spending our precious hours of our lives on this case? Studying it, getting to know its victims. I feel like I knew them personally, I guess because I've studied it so much. But we also have to remember that we don't know what goes on behind closed doors. My guess is a lot of eye rolling and perhaps some hollering. I'm told that on a Sunday was my grandmother's hell-raising days. My dad and his parents and brothers all worked very hard on the family farm 6 days a week. Come Sunday, they all went to church at the insistence of my grandmother. Then they would come home and have Sunday supper. My dad told us that's when all the bitching and hell-raising started. She would address each person in turn and tell them off and express her disapproval for all the wrong shit they had done during the week. She'd end up having everybody either in tears or almost in tears. My dad said you would never recognize her from that woman that had just been praising the Lord and singing hymns at the top of her lungs just an hour earlier. I'm going to kind of toot my own horn here and say that I think I may have gotten my bitching and hell-raising skills from her. He said it would go on for hours on end, and no one was allowed to leave the table until she was done. And sometimes someone would be slapped and have it tip their chair over backwards, and she would just keep on going, like the Energizer Bunny. She was a big woman, too, not fat, but big-boned and muscular. She was strong like ox from working so hard all of her life. You know, but my family, they would have been good candidates to go in and see Miss Lena for some family dynamics counseling. But back to Chris Trollface Watts. I wonder if he was doing any of that weird, inappropriate laughing behind Shanann's back. My guess is that he did the same kind of crap a 12-year-old boy does. But let's see what Miss Lena says. I hope I'm not being too fresh and disrespectful by calling the author by her first name. Land sakes alive. It feels so good to say the word author, and to know that it's true. I feel like a kid in a candy store. The author understands that there are people, well, like us, that have studied the case inside and out, backwards and forwards. She feels it's important to retell the story for those that don't know it. I'm just glad she recognizes us. I feel confident she's not going to try and pull the wool over our eyes. Quote, there was no way anyone involved in this tragedy could have seen it coming, end quote. Interesting, but also scary. Quote, my hope is we can prevent abuse and violence if we have more of an understanding and know what signs to look out for, end quote. She will be covering relational dynamics, attachment theory, and the traits and characteristics of Chris Watts and people like him. Thank you. Something we can all learn about together. People can know what signs to look out for so that they can get the help they need and or leave a bad situation before it gets to a catastrophic level. such as the Watts case. Quote, "This book was born out of a desire to understand how something like these murders could happen and to explore ideas of how, individually and collectively, we can try to prevent similar tragedies in the future. The psychoanalysis in this book is not intended as definitive truth, as it is speculation and opinion based on the author's professional opinion and expertise. The author has never personally met Chris Watts or anyone affiliated with his crime and is not officially diagnosing any individual with a mental illness." End quote. I love how open and shit she is. I have a feeling she's free of deceit and untruthfulness too. What a cool Christmas present we have. I can't wait to really get started with this book. This is not an imitation, it's a real book. I feel like my soul can begin to heal now that I've been released from that previous printed work of evil and suffering. So let me shut up so we can really get started on this book. And that will be the end of this video. I will pick up with chapter 1 in the next one. Thank you for listening.